Presenter time to present his paper. Professor Bello, I'm not giving you the chance to present your paper. I will be monitoring you. When it is time, I will tell you it's time off.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina wa nabiyyina wa habibina wa shafi'ina wa maulana Muhammad. Wa ala alihi wa ashabihi. Tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. The chairman, distinguished, noble, and esteemed, respected personalities here present. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The title of my presentation is Understanding Nigeria's Current Economic Realities, Exchange Rate Dynamics, Currency Devaluation, and their impact on everyday financial life. And I have been given 30 minutes to present my paper. I'll try to talk to the paper based on the slides, which are not more than 13 to 14 slides, while the full paper calculated a 16-page paper containing all the relevant statistics and references. I would like to start by saying that even though it's not strictly legal in nature or jurisprudential in nature, it has a lot of implications on our everyday financial life as qadis, as judges, as legal practitioners, as academics, and as human beings who have to interact with others, transact businesses, and spend money in order to meet ends. While I will not be able to speak the way lawyers or legal practitioners or quddat do, I'll try to keep the discussions to, a form that the technical terms that are commonly used in accounting, in finance, in economics, in banking are understood by the greater majority of the people who are here. I'll start by taking us through a very short journey by way of introduction, by reminding us what we already know, that Nigeria is facing weakening naira, rising inflation, and policy shifts. We're all aware that from May 2023, when the current President Bola Ahmad Tinubu, was making his first speech, he mentioned that Naira will be allowed to float, meaning government will not continue to support Naira against the dollar. It will be allowed to struggle in order to find a befitting place for itself. You also mentioned that from that time, fuel subsidy is gone, meaning government will not continue to spend money trying to support importers or citizens of Nigeria in order to pay little money to buy fuel. Again, last year around October, 4 bills were released for or submitted to the 2 houses for debate, consideration, and subsequent approval or passage on taxation or tax. That generated a lot of debates, and a new tax act or new tax acts were accented by Mr. President this year. These 3 important policies: 1, on the floating of the Naira; 2, removal or subsidy; and 3, Tax Reform Act, have a lot of implications on our everyday financial life. We know that when there is changes, or when there are rapid changes, persistent changes in the value of a currency, that currency will experience exchange rate volatility. And this is another issue that many people are not familiar with, even though the multiplier effect of the volatility is affecting everyone. It is in view of this that the paper explores 4 areas: 1, exchange rate dynamics; 2, currency devaluation; 3, socio-economic consequences; and 4, the role of Islamic finance in all this. If we look at Nigeria's economic performance as it is today, from the last 2 years, we can see that real GDP growth has been recorded, especially this year, first quarter of this year, 2025. However, in 2023, our GDP experienced a fall from 3.3% in 2022 to 2.9%. But as I said, it jacked up a little this year by the end of first quarter to 3.9%. In terms of inflation, 3 years ago, 2022, Nigeria's inflation rate was about 8%, still double digit, not single digit. When many countries of the world are struggling to attain single digit, meaning less than 10%, in Nigeria, as at 2022, we were having 18% inflation rates. But then this rate jacked up, and it is still jacking up by the day, or by the week, or by the month, to 32.7% as of September 2024. Of course, at a point towards the end of 2024 through to the beginning of 2025, inflation rates came down a little, but it quickly went up due to lack of supporting policy that would help inflation to come back. or to come down. In terms of fiscal deficit, that is GDP, we also were having 5.1% of GDP as our fiscal deficit. But then, after 2023, we started having a growing deficit, an increased deficit. And up to now, the deficit rate or deficit value of our economy is not appreciable. In terms of poverty, about 46% of Nigeria's population is struggling with extreme poverty. As at around October 2025, it has been estimated that about 107 to 129 million Nigerians are living far below the poverty line of about $3.2 per day. Of course, it's not possible, in fact, to say that Nigerians will live above the poverty line. Because if $3.2 is converted to Naira, we know what that means. What it will translate is a little high or higher than a professor will earn in a day or earns in a day. Of course, for the judges, they are comfortable. Even without asking, they were actually pampered by the government. And we need them to be pampered, otherwise they would not concentrate on education. So we are not envious of that. In fact, they deserve more than what they were given. But that should have extended or should have been extended to other sectors of the country. Now, I'm faced with a problem. I don't have my laptop. There is no light, so I can no longer see the slides. So I can continue, but I may not have flow of the presentation. So maybe I come back to this place, I use the system. Or let me quickly open my tablet. Sorry, please. Okay. I think I'm good to go. Okay. There are also some structural changes which our economy is facing. One, in terms of industrialization, the economy is weak because agriculture is contributing only 35%. Services, 52%, which is fine. But then industry, 12%. We also have infrastructure deficit. We have problems with insecurity, as we all know, and then weak governance, which also is a fact that is associated with many developing countries. In terms of regional poverty disparities, yes, there is regional poverty disparities. For example, northern states are worse affected with poverty. Sometimes these statistics may reveal or may actually call for concern, but then when you look at it again from another angle, you understand that sometimes it is just given that most part of the northern region would be worst affected by poverty because of numbers. The population is not the same. If you go, for example, some of the, maybe you can, the state you can call smallest state in terms of population, like maybe Zamfara and a few others like that, when you compare them with most of the states in South-South, apart from river states, you would see that they have more population than those states. So it's natural that because of the numbers, that sometimes poverty will be higher in this region. But on top of that, there are other factors which we all know. Because, for example, the idea of almajiranci, not karatun almu, I mean almajiranci begging, is still with us. And it is very, very prevalent in our region, which is something that we all know, even though we detest, we don't like, but it's still persisting. It is still there, and we are not doing much or as much as we need to do to correct it. And also, in many parts of the northern region, you find that there are a segment of the society that is actually not being encouraged to be more productive. For example, you go to many communities and you find that women are actually not entrepreneurs. They are not entrepreneurial. They are not actually encouraged to be productive in addition to the contribution they are making at home in terms of upbringing, in terms of taking care of the family and the rest of it. There is also the possibility for them to go into productive activities. But you find that they are not being encouraged to do that. So this could actually be some of the reasons why the region is having more challenge with poverty than other regions. But of course, if you go to other regions, you will still see poverty speaking for itself. You will see poverty walking on the streets. If you go to, for example, even like River State in South Nigeria, River State is perhaps the richest and perhaps the most elitist town. But just leave Port Harcourt, go to any area, any part of River State apart from Port Harcourt. What will you see? Nothing except poverty. Go to Ogon line, Derry, Bori, or all of them, you don't see anything except poverty. What you would see is, poverty in the midst of plenty. So this is also a challenge. Then in terms of exchange rate dynamics, yes, Naira is depreciating or has depreciated, both in terms of official and parallel market rates. Of course, the era of having like 200 Naira or even more as difference between official and parallel market rate is gone with the floating of the Naira. So you now have not more than 5 Naira at most, or 7 Naira at most, as a difference between official rate and parallel market rate, which is good, because at least it has helped in so many ways in addressing the problem of people just making claim to collect foreign exchange for what is actually not genuine. So that has helped in so many ways. It has also capped the sharp practices of black market system of dealing with the dollar. So that has helped in a way. But then, because of that floating, the Naira has significantly depreciated. Our external reserve is appreciated, no doubt. As at November 2025, this month we are speaking, we have about $44.18 billion in our reserve, which we believe is something significant and it is good relative to what we used to have in the past. Now, what are the key drivers for this exchange rate dynamic? One is strong dollar demand. Still people's demand for dollar. The demand for dollar is very high. Why is it high? Because we go for, many people sponsor their children to abroad for their, especially tertiary education. So they have to pay in dollars in most cases. Two, Medicare, because we don't have a Medicare system in the country, people have to rush, including even poor people like lecturers, university lecturers. They have to go out of the country in search of sound and effective Medicare. And that requires them to look for dollar and travel with it or send the value, in the dollar, in advance, which means our demand for dollar is very high. As a result of which, because we know that from the elementary economics, we know that the higher the demand, the higher the price. So because the demand is high, the price of dollar is, increasing by the day. Another reason for this exchange rate dynamics is the issue of capital outflow. Many people are taking their dollars outside Nigeria to hold it or to keep it or to save it. They don't want to bring it because it will be depreciated in value. Even though if you come with few dollars to Nigeria, you stand to gain huge amount of Naira. Yet they believe it is speculative it is not stable, it is unstable, and anything can happen anytime, and therefore people prefer to take their currency outside Nigeria. And because of that, they now look for dollar, buy with their naira, and then take it out. And since they are taking out the dollar, because they want to secure whatever money they have, that translates to higher demand as against the supply of the dollar. Another reason is speculation. There is also speculative businesses. People are not sure what will happen to the dollar in the few months' time to come. People are not sure of what will happen to naira. Therefore, there is this speculation, and because of that tendency to speculate on exchange rates, we are facing very, very high demand for dollar and lesser or lower demand for naira. Therefore, naira is depreciating and dollar is appreciating. There is also problem of confidence. People do not have confidence in our naira because they will go to the market with 500,000 naira in their account, and before they leave the market, that 500 naira is gone, and they will come out with just one nylon of polythene bag. That's what is contained in that 500,000 naira. And because of that, they feel they don't need to have confidence in the naira. And because they don't have confidence in the naira, people are actually buying dollar and still stocking it at home. Not even taking it out, but also stocking it at home. So that also led to higher demand for dollar and lower demand for naira. Then in terms of currency devaluation, the impact is high or is much on us. We know that our naira was devalued through naira to dollar floating that was announced by the present administration in 2023. Before that pronouncement, a dollar was sold for 460 naira. That was the value of dollar, or the exchange rate between naira and dollar, official rate, as at May 2023. But soon after the pronouncement, things changed. At a point in time, a dollar was exchanged for 1,700 naira, 1,800 naira. Of course, alhamdulillah, the rate has come down. We are now exchanging dollar with naira for around 1,465 to 1,500. But that still is telling on the economy. But then, interestingly, from an economics or macroeconomics perspective, when you have currency devaluation, it has some benefits. It's not that everything about it is bad. It has some benefits, some of which are it improves balance of payment. The balance of payment of a country stands to improve as a result of currency devaluation. Again, it may also boost government revenue. But then, while that is happening, inflation will surge, as we are witnessing. High cost of living and erosion of purchasing power. You may have, in just 4 or 5 years ago, with 20,000 naira or 30,000 naira, when you go to the market, local market, not elitist market, you come out with something tangible. But now, with 30,000 naira, you are not better than a beggar 10 years ago. Now, all these dynamics in terms of exchange rate dynamics, in terms of currency devaluation, they have their own impact. They have a lot of impact on the people, on our everyday life. One, food inflation. Today, households have been estimated to be spending 70% of all the income they earn on food. 70% of a typical household income is being spent on food. I don't mean the income of Georges, I mean typical Nigerians. Two, you are a special species in Nigeria. Two, average cost of healthy diet, what they call healthy diet, has now reached 1,255. And that's why I said for the average Nigerian, not for the Jews. Because come to think of it, we are saying 1,255 naira as the average cost of a healthy diet. Would anyone here claim that he would take a meal for 1,500 naira? None of you. You will be talking of 5,000, 7,000, 9,000. But here we are saying, based on the estimate, it has been estimated that the average cost of a healthy diet is 1,255 naira per person. Which means, if you now cascade this to a household of 5 people per month, that household will need at least 188,250 naira per month, as against the minimum salary of 70,000 naira. It means they either forego healthy diet, or they take 0, 1, 0 or 0, 0, 1, or they look for other means to augment and supplement their earnings. Otherwise, they won't be able to survive. Pump price, petroleum, we know, as at May or April 2023, we know the pump price. But today, we know also what we are buying. At a point in time, 95 naira per liter to 448, shortly before election. Then immediately after election, it rose to 617, then to 855, 897, to 1,030 naira. But thank God, it is now coming down. We are buying fuel, per liter, petroleum per liter, of between 940 to 970, depending on the state or the location you are buying from. In terms of extreme poverty, I mentioned earlier that about 129 million Nigerians are living in, extreme poverty situation. They are living below poverty line. And surprisingly, about 29 million Nigerians became poor in just 1 year, according to the statistics. They became poor. They were not poor, but they became poor in just 1 year, between June 2023 to June 2024. Poverty rate for vulnerable groups is increasing by the day. Children are estimated to be having about 72.5% poverty rate, women 63.9%, rural populations 75.5%. Then low education adults also suffer higher poverty rate than high education adults. For example, those with no formal education at all are estimated to have constituted about 79.5% of those facing poverty. Those with school and secondary school education have 61.9% and 50% respectively. In terms of multidimensional poverty, that is education, health, and quality of life, the rate is also increasing by the day. There is poor access to water, sanitation, and electricity. Now, with all this, what should be the key priorities for us? For us Nigerians and for our government. The first key priority or policy priority is tackling food inflation. As it is now, we are facing serious problem with food. So we are facing food insecurity, especially in the northern part of the country and more especially in the northwest part of the country. Why? Because of insecurity. We know what is happening in Katsina State, Zamfara State, some parts of Sokoto State, some parts of Kebbi, especially with the emergence of Lakurawa, some parts of Niger State, some parts of Kaduna State. And for Kaduna State, not only the issue of banditry, but also this communal ethno-religious crisis in southern Kaduna due to farmer header conflicts And then we also know some part of North Central, as I mentioned, Niger State is one of them. Plateau and Benue are also facing they have their own share of insecurity. All these are contributing to lower production, agricultural produce. It is contributing to lower agricultural produce year in, year out. So we are facing food insecurity. Even though the government is trying in terms of importation, it is importing, rice, and it has imported maize, and this year or this time around, they are importing rice. But the danger there is while you are importing, you are also killing local farmers. The correct thing to do by government should have been to buy at commercial rate from our local farmers, store it, preserve it. When it is time for people to get that benefit, you bring it out from the stores and sell at whatever discounted rate you want. If you are also bringing in, because we cannot produce what is enough for us, what we are producing now is not enough for us. So if you also want to assist by importing, you import, but then already you have made provision for buying from local producers or local farmers to store it, and you buy at commercial rates, normal rate. But as it is, for those of you who are farmers or who have anything to do with farming, you know that this year there is problem, because the average cost of producing a bag of maize is relatively or a little above 35 naira, from 35 to 39 or 40 naira, and 40,000 naira. But then, what is the cost of a bag of maize in our markets? Between 29 and 35 naira, 35,000 naira. Which means people have now produced and are forced to sell, but at a loss. So what will happen next year? Will many people go back to the farm? They will not. So if care is not taken, we would have more problem with food security in the near future. May Allah prevent from having that. Again, there is a need to improve fiscal governance and public spending efficiency. If you look at the pattern of our spending, especially in government, I mean, one will cry, because you know that a lot of bad things are happening there. There is no priority in our spending on things that we don't need, things that are not necessary, at the expense of things that are necessary. So unless government change its pattern of spending, will continue to be revolving within the same cycle. Then there is also a need to expand social protection and cash transfers. Because what is happening in many countries of the world today is that they are doing a lot in the area of social protection and cash transfers. Of course, in Nigeria, we have it, but then we need to make it more effective and more efficient. Then there is also a need to protect poorest of the population, from inflation, and also take necessary measures to boost their livelihoods. There's also a need to reduce oil dependency, because if you continue to depend on oil alone, if oil is what we will depend on only or largely, then we'll continue to have problems. We need to promote agro-processing, manufacturing, digital services, and the rest of it. We also need to create jobs in higher labor absorption sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, service industry. These are the areas or sectors that absorb a lot of labor. So the more you create jobs there, the more you make them more effective and efficient, the more you will be able to absorb many people and provide jobs. We also need, the government needs to support SMEs, small and medium enterprises, vocational training, and digital innovation. These are very key and they are very important if we want to make a progress. Now, all of these are not disconnected or are not unconnected with the type or the nature of our economic system. As we know, we're operating a conventional capitalist economic system that has very little or no respect for the welfare of the poor or the less privileged people. If these economic problems are to be fixed, In addition to what we have said, there's also the need for government to consider more the application of Islamic alternative financial tools. And in the paper, I mentioned that because Islamic finance is asset-based, is interest-free, and is risk-sharing, it provides a lot of solutions to our multifarious problems. For example, we talk about speculative dollar businesses or dollar-related businesses. Because Islamic finance is unique in the area of discouraging and in some cases prohibiting speculative businesses, because it combines sometimes the characteristics of both unacceptable level of uncertainty, that is al-gharar al-fahish, as well as maisir or gambling. If Islamic finance alternative is applied, the idea of speculation in terms of exchange rate between this currency and currency will be reduced to the barest minimum. Again, if you use asset-backed based transaction, where you will not loan money to people, you don't loan money to people, give them money to go and do whatever they want and they return the money with interest. Rather, you ask them to identify a particular asset that they want, and then you buy that, sell it to them for a profit. That will checkmate the area of people spending money unnecessarily and other people making profit without any sweat. Because if you go by the idea of using asset-backed system to allow people to own assets through like murabaha, even though in modern financial transactions, we don't use al-murabaha al-adiyya, whereby you just like a normal businessman in the market, you keep something and someone come and see and get interest, and then you tell him this is the price he buys. For Islamic financial institutions like Islamic banks, that's not what they do. What they do is they do what is called al-murabaha lil-shira'i. Al-murabaha lil-amiri bil-shira'. That is murabaha to the purchase order. You are the one who is interested in a particular asset. You don't have money to buy it. You meet a financial institution. I need this, but I don't have money. Borrow me money. No, we don't borrow money. We don't give cards. We don't do that. So what can we do? We can only buy the asset, own it, and then sell it to you. So that is acceptable. So you have identified a particular asset. This is the amount, and you agree with even the vendor, the owner, the seller on a particular price, and the bank will go in, take all the necessary risk before selling it to you. Because we know the qaida, al-gunmu bil-gurmi. So if you cannot take risk, you cannot make any profit. So therefore, the bank will acquire the asset in its own name, take all the necessary risk, bear the risk, because al-kharaju bid-daman. So you bear the risk and then you sell it to the client or the customer, and then you make a profit on it. And this is already there, even in the books of Malikiya. There are, among the scholars of Malikiya, there are some of them that have accepted this. But then Imam Shafi'i is the champion of this, as contained in his Al-Ummu. It is clearly stated that someone can come to you and say, buy this for me, or buy this and I will buy from you for a profit. And this is what is called Al-Murabaha lil-Amiri bi-Shira'i. Through this, people can actually own assets and will be allowed to pay installmentally over a period of time. And one of the differences between this and lending money to people is, since this is a shira, it involves sale. And we know that Allah says in the Quran, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Allah has permitted sale and prohibited riba, interest. This is a sale. The other one is qard. It's not a sale, it's just about lending. So therefore, this is a difference. Another difference is that if you borrow money from a bank, for example, in the event where there is increase in lending policy or lending rate of the Central Bank of Nigeria, it will cascade down to the banks, and the bank will increase the rates, the lending rate, without even consulting you. They will only send you a notice that what you have at 15% interest has been now increased to 20% interest, and you have nothing to do. But in the case of Muraba al-Amri Bishra, since it is a sale, it's a form of bay'u, you cannot increase the price. And this is an issue that differentiates this particular sale from al-qard, alladhi jarra. Also, even in the event of defaults, you cannot increase any amount on top of the price agreed, that's the sale price. But if it were to be a loan from a bank, in the event of default, what happens? Your account will just go, red, and you will be charged, and that will make the interest to compound. But in the case of sale, there will be no such opportunity for the seller. He cannot. The highest thing he can do is to report you, or to say, okay, since you are not paying and you have the means of paying, then I will invoke this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Matarul Ghani Zulmun. In another narration, you hilu irda wa ma'ala. So you can now invoke this and say, okay, we will charge you default. But even if you charge penalty for default, you cannot use it as part of your ribu, your profit. Rather, you must channel it out to charity. So you can see there is between this and that, and that is what makes it interesting and makes it a viable alternative to what we see our economy battling with. Also, you can begin to think about ijara. For example, today, in using ijara, we know ijara, the book, in all our fiqh books, I think right from the book of Zaria, Risala, up to Muqtasar, you will find a chapter or at least a fasal, a section on al-ijara. But then this ijara has now metamorphosed into something else, because you can use ijara to do so many things today. We used to know al-ijara al-adiyah. Al-ijara al-adiyah, you have an asset and you lease it out, you give it as rent. You give it for someone to use the usufruct and then he pays rent, isn't it? That's what you know, al-ijara al-adiyah. But then today, it is far beyond that. There is this ijara muntahiya bil-tamlik. There is also ijara thumma al-bay'. You can make, you can agree with the lessee. The lessee, the person collecting the asset to benefit from it, is your usufruct and pay back rent and pay rent. You can agree at initial that, okay, the intention here is we will lease this asset, and in the course of paying rent, we will imbue or we will also embed some part of its selling price. So we will sell this asset for 10 million naira, but you will be paying rent on it depending on your portion of ownership over the time. So you can pay in 10 years, maybe in 10 years or in 5 years, and the time the very day you make the last payment, that is the day you will acquire the asset. It is called ijara muntahiya bitamlik. Not only that, it has even gone more sophisticated today, whereby you can use what is called ijaratul khadamat or ijaratul manafi. You have a case, you want to send your child somewhere outside the country, or you want to go for studies and you don't have the means. Nobody is willing to borrow you money. You can go to an Islamic financial institution and say, okay, I want to be sponsored, but they cannot give you money. So they can buy the services of teaching you to acquire a degree from that institution and sell the service to you. Or for a medical tour, or maybe you have a case of surgery and you don't have the means of putting the bill, you can liaise with, you can go to an Islamic financial institution, they will liaise with the doctors or with the hospital, they give them the exact amount of money required for the services needed by you, and then they will purchase the service, pay to the bank, pay to the hospital, and then they sell the same service to you so that you can go and benefit it. This is called ijarat al-khadamat or ijarat al-manafi, which means using this can go a long way in solving part of some of the economic challenges we are facing. And that is why we have our sukuk, which is today booming in Nigeria. It is being oversubscribed. Anytime the federal government offers sukuk for subscription, it is being oversubscribed. The last one, which was offered in April, May this year, the government wanted only 300 billion naira. So it offered the sukuk for subscription. But what did the government receive? The government received well over 2 trillion naira. From 300 billion only, government ended up receiving more than 2 trillion naira, meaning there was more than 300% increase. Sukuk was oversubscribed. Recently, Taj Bank concluded it is on Tier 1 Mudaraba Sukuk, and it was oversubscribed. That's the second series. It was oversubscribed by 185%, which means it's an opportunity for government to actually benefit and also benefit its citizens. I can see that it's already time. So these are some of the things that we can do to better the lot of the citizens of Nigeria. There is also the issue of istisna, which want of time will not allow me to go into that. But then there is also the issue of Islamic social finance in order to ensure social safety nets through zakat, waqf, and qard. Shortly before before the end of the opening session, I was discussing with the director, and he made reference to a fatwa that is going on right now, that if, for example, someone is a farmer and he grow or harvests his agricultural produce, that he is not required to pay zakah unless and until he deduct all the expenses incurred. But that truly is not a strong fatwa. It is a very, very weak fatwa. Yes, I'm aware that Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami, Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami of the OIC has issued a fatwa. However, that's not the way they put the fatwa. The fatwa says that where a farmer does not have capital, you don't have any means of getting capital with which to do the farming, and then you end up borrowing from a source, and you don't have any other source of repaying or paying back the loan except from the agricultural produce. You don't have your own money, you have to borrow, and you have no any other means of paying the loan except from the produce itself. Then they said, in that case, you will be treated like a normal trader, a normal businessman who is supposed to pay zakah, but he has debt outstanding. So he subtract the debt, he pay the debt first before paying zakah from whatever is remaining. This is the fatwa of Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami. That okay, since you don't have any means of paying back the debt or the loan you collected in order to farm, then pay or sell some of the agricultural produce to be able to pay back. And then whatever is left, that is when the issue of zakah will start. But if you have another means of paying the loan, then you cannot actually remove a thier, a wood from the agricultural produce. You must use wa'atu hakahu yawma hasadihi the way it is. And then, if you use your own capital to do the farming, not even borrowing, you have no business even thinking of removing or recouping your investment. Rather, whatever it is, is there and it must apply. So these are some of the things that I think the judges need to bear in mind, because sometimes some issues may come up around this. It's just like the issue of debt. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just 1 minute, please. I'll round up. Like the issue of debt. This has been a recurring issue. For example, someone is indebted to another, maybe through sale or through Qard al-Hasan, but the person refused to pay back. 10 years down the line, he now come and say, this is your money. But when you gave him the money 10 years ago, maybe the value of dollar was just 114 or 140 per dollar. But today, and you gave him like 500,000 naira. Today that he's paying back the money, 500,000 naira, the value will not fetch even $200 for you. In those days, it will fetch about $2,000, but today it will not fetch up to $300. And then if you go to the market to buy whatever you want to buy, in those days, 500,000 naira 10 years ago is enough to buy you 3 or 4 or even 5 motorcycles so that you can give it to someone to do a chaba. But today, a good motorcycle costs more than 500,000 naira. So therefore, what will you do? As the Qadi, if you are presented with this matter, how are you going to solve the problem? We know that this is karku, and karku must not bring about benefit. Any karku, jara manfa'a, we know it is not permissible. Again, since there is encouragement by Allah in the Quran, so therefore, the person should not accept any benefit. However, there is injustice on the part of the owner of the money, because this man, most of the time, they have the money to pay, but they will not pay. So what will you do? Will you invoke the idea of Zaria, or idea of maybe you use ta'zir, or what are you going to do? Of course, from the classical books of fiqh, we are aware very well that the majority of Maliki scholars are of the view that it must be returned exactly the way it is, because you have done an act of ibadah, so let it be. Do not spoil your act of ibadah. But then few minority views within Maliki school are of the view that no, you look at the day of the payment and the day that you pay, you give the loan. What is the value on the day you give the loan? And then in relation to the value of the day of repayment. So they say whatever is the qima on the day of giving the loan, that is the qima you will use. Meaning you will now project and say, okay, 500,000 naira 10 years ago had a value of this, it can buy this type of car. What will it cost to buy this car today? And then that is what you are going to use. You know, this is a matter of ijtihad, but it's something that can happen to you. It can happen, it can come to your office as a qadi on appeal or from the trial court. What are you going to do about it? These are issues that have to do with our economic realities. It is the economic reality that will lead you to, have to, or that will make you to look into this with a view to finding solution for it, based on the existing principle or established principles of the Sharia. You look at the usul, you look at the maqasid, you look at the qawaid, and then you go back to the main nusus of Quran and nusus of Hadith, and then you come up with something that will be acceptable, at least will be acceptable to Allah first, even if it's not acceptable to one party. But then it requires some level of ijtihad, and we need to broaden our thought in order to navigate some of these challenges. With this, I would like to thank the chairman for allowing me to extend beyond this. The paper contains so many things that I could not present. At least I've skipped about 4 very important slides, which I would have loved to share with you. But no problem, you have the full paper, which inshallah, if you read, you would get some of this. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. At least the paper he presented, like he said even from the beginning, that it affected everybody. Whether you are a legal practitioner, whether you are a judge, whether you are this and that. And then it's better we look at it squarely. One of the areas he's talking about, this issue of taxation. I'm sure we're all aware with the so-called tax reforms at the beginning of January. If you don't have that tax identification number, it means you'll be in trouble. So that it will not be like what is happening in NIM. When they gave the deadline, then people were rushing. So it's better you try to get your TIN right away, away to whatever is going to happen. Because without that TIN, from January, unless anything happens, any transaction you want to do without that TIN, it will not work. So I think you better have a list. So I don't want to take much of it or allow them, but if you permit, let us take the second paper so that we now ask the questions together. One line we can go and present it.
the chairman of the session, my lords, our parents and justices of the Court of Appeal, of courts, my brothers and colleagues, judges and caddies. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You see, I think it was last year we had a symposium organized by this center in collaboration with the IIT Nigeria branch. I and Professor Dogarawa were among the presenters. But you see how lecturers are. If they talk like a talking machine. So even at then, Professor Dogarawa spent much time because he used to speak to the paper. So from the initial, when I was asked to write and I saw that Professor Dogarawa was among the presenters of the papers, I know that it will take us at least much time because as a professor and a professional in that field, I decided to make my paper very brief and short because of my experience on how you see the paper presentation have been made. For number one reason that the time given to me was very short. And secondly, maybe the participants might be lost within the margins of multiple and multitude explanation by jurists and juristic opinion. Sadly, these issues are issues that should not be deeply, I say deeply discussed by the judges and justices. Because one day, one time, you will be quoted that you said so and so. So that is, it is our nature that judges do not talk much. Instead to speak to the paper, I decided just to read the paper so that we can save the time. If I am to take the procedure Professor Dogarawa took, it will not take us to the desired destination. So the paper is very short, and I accept all the shortcomings in the paper because of the short time given. So let me read. I consider it a great honor to be asked by the Administrator, National Judicial Institute, Honorable Justice B.A. Adejimo OFR, and the Director, Center for Islamic Legal Studies, Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, Dr. A.S. Abubakar, to present a paper on determining nisab in cases of theft, other criminal matters in times of inflation and the extant instability, classical rulings and modern adaptation at this August gathering of reputable personnel. This topic for discuss, no doubt is paramount as it touches the people's daily lives. I welcome you all. May God Almighty bless all of us. It appears from the time immemorial that the damage in physical, property, and life is a phenomenon which no society can get rid of. That is why when it occurred, it attracts more reactions from the victim or the victim's family and the general community. Historically, people used to take revenge against the perpetrator or his family no more. With the development in human reasoning on lives, people began to have a second thought that revenge appears to be disastrous as it always resulted in losing more lives. Compensation was adopted as a system which may release both victims and his or their family. In the same vein, Islamic legal principles or objectives, that is Maqasid al-Sharia, seek to protect the people's property and its ownership from any attack. That is why anybody who takes another's property without his permission will face strict punishment, provided the conditions for the punishment are present, devoid of any doubt. In classical perspective, camel is the origin of thier, that is blood money. However, jurists differ in other than camel. Other than camel includes gold, silver, and others. Gold and silver are often used as a benchmark for financial calculations in Islamic law. The nisab in crimes is tied to Sharia-compliant valuation. The market value of these items is fluctuating and can be complex during inflation and exchange rate instability when it comes to the revaluation. Currently, we're experiencing crucial considerations by scholars and in quotas on the issue of different currencies, locations, particularly in terms of currency exchange rate globally. For example, in Nigeria, the issue of sadaq, which is the same with the nisab itself, the prominent Islamic scholar in Kano, Sheikh Ibrahim Khalil, was reported to have said that sadaq should be 20 Southern Naira only, as opposed to the view of another scholar in Yola, Sheikh Mukhtar Yola, who insisted on classical view of 1/4 of dinar. This paper, therefore, shall explain the concept of nisab as it relates to theft, thier, that is blood money, and the other criminal matters through the mirror of classical rulings, relevant statutory authorities, and modern adaptations. The nature under Islamic law. The major objective of Islamic law, Sharia, are the attainment of happiness and security of human beings. This happiness and security cannot be achieved without laws promulgated to regulate the conduct of fellow human beings. Among these laws, there is what is called criminal law or law of crimes. According to all kinds of prohibited and injurious action, whether they relate to human body, to property, or other relations. Crimes under Islamic law are divided into 3 categories. They are hudud, that is fixed punishment, qisas, that is killing and hurts in retaliation, and ta'zir, discretionary punishment. Briefly, hudud, which is a plural of had, refers to the punishment fixed by the Quran or Hadith, even though juries were not unanimous on hudud offenses, but zina, that is the illicit sexual intercourse, other false accusation, sarika, refers to the punishment usually corporal that can be administered at the discretion of the judge. Our concern in this presentation is the issue of theft, thier, blood money, and other bodily hurts than theft. Theft, which is sarika in Arabic, refers to an illegal and intentional property without their consent or permission. The aim of safeguarding the public and individual wealth is very much pronounced in Islamic law. That is why Islamic law enforces capital punishment of amputation on who takes the material goods of other without just cause. The Quran stated, and as thief and female thief cut off from the wrist joint their hands as a repentance for that which they committed, a punishment by way of example from Allah. Allah is all-powerful, all-wise. Similarly, Islamic law, types of wrongdoings counter to personal possession. Thus, Allah said, and eat up not one's another's property unjustly in any illegal way, like stealing, robbing, deceiving, etc. No give bribery to the rulers. that is judges, before presenting your cases, knowingly eat up a part of the property of others sinfully. However, it is not all theft that attracts the punishment of amputation, unless it is satisfied by the courts that all conditions precedent are present, like the subject matter of the theft must be lawful and valuable in the sight of law, the value must reach the nisab, it must be taken from the safe custody, that is heirs, the accused person must have no permission to enter the premises, and the accused person must not have interest in the subject matter, that is the co-owner or co-heir or what have you. Then qisas. As stated earlier, Islamic law guarantees 5 important things, that is the protection of lives, lineage, intellect and posterity, religion and property. Our concern here is protection of lives. Quran stated that the episode of 2 sons of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. One killed his brother and unable to hide him, the Almighty Allah sent a crow to show him how to hide his brother. Allah said, because of that, we ordained to the children of Israel that if anyone killed a person, not in retaliation of murder, or to separate mischief in the land, it will be as if he killed all mankind. And if anyone saved a life, it will be as if he saved the lives of all mankind. So also Quran emphasizes that ordinarily a believer shall not and never kill another believer unless by mistake, and if it happens, the compensation is due. However, there might be a willful killing. That is why Quran stated, and do not kill anyone whose killing Allah has forbidden except for the just cause. And whoever is killed wrongfully, that is وَمَنْ قُتِلَ مَظْلُومًا فَقَدْ جَعَلْنَا لِوَلِيهِ سُلْطَانًا فَلَا يُسْرِفْ فِي الْقَتْلِ إِنَّهُ كَانَ مَنْصُورًا. That is do not kill anyone whose killing Allah has forbidden except for a just cause. And whoever killed wrongfully, that is mazluman, intentionally, with hostility and oppression, and not by mistake, we have given his heir the authority to demand qisas law of equality in punishment, or to forgive, or to take diya blood money, but not him exceed the limits in the matter of taking life, i.e. he should not kill except the killer. Verily he is helped by the Islamic law. From the verses above, one can say it creates 2 types of homicide. Number 1 is intentional homicide. Number 2, unintentional homicide. However, jurists added semi-intentional, that is where there is mens rea intention to act, but the outcome of the act is not intended. So also Maliki jurists added heinous murder, that is qatlul ghila. It should be noted that under Islamic law, the heirs of the victim of intentional homicide have 3 choices as regard to the punishment. Number 1, demand for retaliation, that is qisas. Number 2, diya, blood money. Number 3, forgive, that is to pardon. Our area of concern is where they chose the payment of blood money. In unintentional homicide case, only diya, blood money, is to be paid. For semi-intentional, only enhanced, that is diya mukhallaza, and only enhanced diya is to be imposed, that is diya mukhallaza. Qatlul amd as recognized, qatlul ghila as recognized by Maliki jurists, which is statutory law applicable in Nigeria. The convict or offender neither be pardoned by the deceased family or heirs. No payment of diya is required, but qisas, that is the capital punishment, he should be killed also. Note that there are other bodily hurts which attract qisas and or payment of diya. Now determining the nisab in theft cases in classical rulings. Nisab refers to a minimum amount of money, a minimum amount of property or money liable to payment of zakat, or which, if stolen, the thief shall be liable to hard punishment. Regarding the amount of the value which establishes theft, there are two divergent opinions among the jurists. First, Hijaz jurist opinion, Maliki and others are among the Hijaz jurists. Secondly, the Iraq jurist opinion. The Hijaz jurist, that is Maliki among them, besieged amputation for the blankets was 3 silver dirhams, or 1/4 of a gold, that is 1/4 of dinar. However, they are parallel about coinage, which stolen goods are to be assessed. Maliki, in his well-known opinion, said such valuation is to be undertaken by means of dirhams and not with 1/4 of dinar. This is the initial view of the Maliki. But according to the jurists of Iraq, the value of nisab, because of which amputation becomes obligatory, is 10 dirhams, and it does not become obligatory in an amount less than this. One group, and among them are Ibn Abi Layla and Ibn Shuburma, says that the hand is not to be amputated for less than 5 dirhams, while it is also said 4 dirhams. Al-Batti was of the view that it is 2 dirhams. You see, I make it very short so that people might not be lost. The majority view holds their view based on Prophet's hadith narrated by Aisha in Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ said that the hand of a burglar shall not be amputated except for 1/4 of dinar or and upwards. See Bukhari. The market value of gold and silver are fluctuating. For example, the nisab value of theft on 25th 1447 AH, which is equivalent to 17th October 2025, was 217 naira 830, as opposed to the Bello as at Friday 16th Jumad al-Ula 1447 AH, which is equivalent to 7th November 2025, which was also 196 677. It is hereby emphasized that there is always need for being vigilant on the updated information about the fluctuations. Determining the nisab in cases of homicide and the other criminal matters, that is bodily injuries, in classical rulings. There is no single nisab for blood money diya, as it is not form of zakat, and its value is determined by different factors, such as types of crime and specific jurisdiction. Instead, it is a compensation amount that is often calculated based on the value of certain number of camels, or it can be fixed by local authorities or through negotiations with the victims. The jurists in the fourth school of thought unanimously agreed that camel is the origin of blood money, and they differ in other than camel. It is clear that there is unanimity among the scholars that the diya for willful intentional is 100 camels or its monetary equivalent. However, the Prophet ﷺ estimated blood money diya in the classification of crime with camels' different character and age. For example, there is khilfa, which carries babies in the womb. We have jiz'a, we have bint laboon, we have bint bakhar, we had hibka, we had jazda, and so on and so forth. Beside camel, gold, silver, cows, goats, and ornament were accepted to be paid as blood money. For the intentional homicide, if the diya is to be paid, one should pay 25 bint makhar, 25 hikka, and 25 jiz'a. For unintentional homicide, 20 bint makhar, 20 ibn makhar, now ibn makhar, not bint makhar, 20 bint laboon, 20 hikka, 30 jiz'a, and 40 khilfa. Similarly, for gold is 100 dinar. Silver is 20,000 dirhams or 10 dirhams, as the case may be, depending on the, you see, the opinion of the jurist there. For cow is 200, some are saying 2,000. For sheep, 2,000. For goat also 2,000. 2,000. For goat, for ornament also 200. The Islamic law did not specify any type of money in feigned blood money. However, it was re-estimated with different categories in order to ease hardship for someone who gets one type but did not get another type. And the reason for mentioning camels, gold and silver was just to evaluate other types with its price because of its circulation and availability in that environment between urban and rural areas, and stability in its value was more than others, as at then. As at 25th Rabiul Thani, 1448 AH, equivalent to 17th October 2025, the value of blood money is 800 million, 871 million, 320,000, as opposed to 786 million, 700 on 16th Jumad al-Ula, 1747 AH, equivalent to 7th November 2025. Other criminal matters. There are some bodily hurts where retribution applies when they are caused intentionally. For example, causing loss of limb or faculty such as eye, tooth, etc. Arsh, that is compensation for injuries, also applies. The payment of compensation in this regard depends on some factors, like to say whether the limb or organ is pairs or singly in the body, and whether it was sound at the time the injury was made or not. Those with no pairs like nose, penis, and tongues, full diya is to be paid. So also the loss of the faculty of sight, hearing, smell, speech, and taste. But for the limbs and organs, that are paid, only half of diya. There are also injuries inflicted on the head or face. This includes harissa, that is the bruise that ruptures the skin, or mere scratch. We have damia, a bruise which causes blood to flow. We have mudhiha, an injury goes deep into the flesh but does not. Munakila, an injury that dislocates the bone and moves it to pull apart. An injury that reaches cerebral and membrane. We have also damigha, an injury that exceeds the brain. We have also hashima, injury that breaks or crushes the bone, or fracture of the skull. We have simha, an injury goes deep to the flesh, etc. There are also cases that warrant the penalty of retaliation, like the full amount of diya, full diya compensation up to 3 times for one injury, half of the full diya, 1/3 of the full diya, 1/10 of the full diya, 1/30 of the full diya, 3/20 of the full diya, and diya subject to the computation of damages, that is hukuma, inflation and exchange instability. The classical rulings on inflation and exchange instability is that the concept of nisab for crimes is tied to the Sharia compliant valuation of the stolen goods or specified commodities, even though can be complex during inflation and exchange instability. Juries may reevaluate the nisab using current market rates for goods like gold or the equivalent in a modern currency to ensure that fairness. Modern adaptation on issues of nisab pertaining crimes and other bodily hurts and their punishment. Modern or contemporary scholars reevaluate the nisab using current market rates for goods like gold or equivalent in a modern currency to ensure fairness. Inflation and instability do not abolish the nisab principle, but require a flexible application of rule to prevent injustice to those being punished. In other words, contemporary Islamic jurisprudence and the bodies and other scholars have issued rulings allowing for adjustment for the monetary value in times of severe inflation or economic instability to ensure fairness and to uphold the intent of Sharia, that is Maqasid Sharia. For example, in the case of willful homicide, the Malaysian Penal Code makes no provision for compensation in place of death sentence. However, the ruler of the state acted in accordance with Article 42 of the Federal Constitution can do the following without the consent of the person sentenced, commit any of the following sentences for any other mentioned after it, maybe the death, imprisonment, fine, section 301 of the Malaysian Criminal Procedure Code. It gives the ruler the discretion to commit any of the sentences, maybe a retaliation, that is the qisas. Instead of qisas, thier should. So also, a shift from hard punishment of amputation to discretionary punishment in many Muslim modern states signaled how modern scholars adapt changes in alternative stable medium to hedge against inflation and instability in exchange rate. Similarly, some scholars use slightly lower weight, which may be favorable to poor. Sometimes silver is used, which is also considered to be more lenient for those in weaker economies. We have challenges. I say, even though the hudud offenses, qisas and related offenses have been codified in Nigeria, you see only 2 cases were reported to be executed. For instance, the case we have all from Zamfara, that's Bello, Jengebi, and Lawali in Chitara only. So can we say that from all this while, our Sharia courts have not been convicted and sentenced for theft for all this while? No. Obviously, we can say no. Yes, because they are given out punishment against the thieves. But the challenges here is in terms of execution. The challenges is term of execution. You see, the governor was given the power, even if the court sentenced somebody to his hand be amputated, so the governor must endorse him. It should, however, noted that in Nigeria, issues of qisas are not more pronounced, even though the offenses and the punishment are codified. We know that there is a judgment of the courts. I don't know, but I never heard that one of the courts give out punishment in respect of the thier, because it is our nature. But especially in northern Nigeria, a driver will negligently drive in overspeed, killed several people, but their families, they say no, it is their fate. Then, for all these challenges, I recommend that scholars should look at the circumstances and give an opinion on how Maqasid Sharia should be applied by considering a shift from classical rulings to contemporary realities. For example, during the time of Caliph Umar, he committed punishment of amputation during inflation and hardship times. Number 2, legislators should consider enactment of laws on estimating a blood money based on the financial status of the offender and his family, as sometimes majority of the offenders are poor. I deliberately skipped the issue of Aqila, that is the family of the accused or the offender. Ibn Abidin is saying that this issue has died because, like in Nigeria, everybody is fighting with his own responsibility. How can a member of the family go and kill somebody and come to share his responsibility? They say no. Go. So that is why I did not even mention the issue of Akila, because I know nobody will tolerate that. In conclusion, I said the role of Nisab and Diya in hudud offenses could not be overemphasized. However, execution of same poses a problem, especially in the times of inflation and instability in currency valuation. This paper highlighted the classical rulings of blood money in qisas and related cases. However, sometimes applying classical text appears to be impracticable. Hence, the need for solutions. Contemporary Muslim scholars adopted some rulings to have the situation attended, especially in times of severe inflation and currency instability, so that the objectives of the Sharia be maintained. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Adi, Dr. Yawo Ibrahim. So now we are now free after hearing the two papers. Especially the last one, this issue of how do you quantify the nisab when it comes to theft in the face of inflation, inflationary trend. Well, I don't know if you allow every situation looking at the one, or we go by what is happening. When you look at some of these our Islamic calendars, they fixed the amount you have to pay for diya, for theft, and what have you, rather than, because it fluctuates. If you look at it, if you look at what they are having in our calendars, this timing committee, what they have fixed for the year, is not the same thing with what you are seeing every year or every month or what have you. It fluctuates. So now in our position as judicial officers, which one are you to choose? The one that is fixed or the one that is fluctuating? Otherwise, where do we stand? I'm sure maybe in the course of our discussion, we will raise some of these issues. Thank you very much. So I'll now open the floor for comments. Let me start from the high table. Do you have any comment on this paper, or you on this paper? Otherwise, then I will go down. The people then will start from our justices from the Court of Appeal if they have, and people there to comment. Yes. Okay. Please, can you give me the microphone?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The situation that Muslims have found themselves in the contemporary world of today is assuming a crisis dimension. And unless the fatwa committees at various levels begin to think of a very good way out, particularly in Muslim communities like Nigeria, where poverty has continued to erode into the livelihoods of ordinary Nigerians. The dollarization of local economies is working a lot of injustice in the lives of Muslims. And unfortunately, some of our scholars are not helping matters. The example that Professor gave of somebody who loaned, say, 500,000 naira to a fellow brother, to a friend, member of his community, go into business. He went into business, or he used it for any purpose that was lawful, and refused to pay, or lacked the wherewithal to pay for so many years. And if, alhamdulillah, situation improved for him, now he wants pay, or he is in a position to pay, what would he pay? Now, how do you determine the value of 500,000 naira 10 years ago against his intention to pay today? Unless you go back to the dollar. How many dollars would 500,000 naira have bought for you 10 years ago? Believe me, he will not be able to pay. He will not be able to pay today. But that is what he has. So long as he has to pay, then the only thing that you could pay is 500,000 naira. Because if you say that you'll have to dollarize 500,000 naira 10 years ago, now he will not have the capacity to pay, and he will die without paying. Unless there is something, unless some people sit down and say, look, not dollar, don't use dollar as the yardstick. But so long as you use the dollar, that man will not be able to pay. Like the drastic example he gave, dollar was 460, 480, less than 500 naira. And by a stroke of pen, it became 1,200, 1,300. So for no fault of yours, you who had taken money in good faith, who is doing a legitimate business, your indebtedness has. So long as you dollarize it, your indebtedness has tripled, and your worth is not triple the value of the loan that you took in good faith and doing a legitimate business. So matters have to be handled, in my view, on case-by-case basis. To come up with a uniform rule applicable to all circumstances and all situations without reverting to the dollar or without this dollarization. Countries of Middle East can do it. Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, whatever, because their currencies are dollar denominated and they have fixed exchange rates. All Muslims here amongst us who have been going to Saudi Arabia all the years, 3.7 riyals to $1. For how many years? Any one of us here, as long as we can remember. In Qatar, it's the same thing. In UAE, it's the same thing. But in Nigeria, dollar has pauperized us, has made us so poor that we can't even discharge our legitimate obligations because everything is dollarized. Mono economy. We earn only dollar through petroleum. We have no other means. If you export whatever product you export outside the country, you earn dollars. So all those people who are at the top, they are safe, they are comfortable, continue to dollarize, but the poor man who has to buy the smallest thing imported into Nigeria using the dollar, and the moment there is a fluctuation in the dollar rate, the price of that item jumps. And there are essential items that he needs for his daily life or for the daily life of his family. The big man up there, they don't commit crimes that will bring them to court to pay thier. They don't. Even if they did, they will find one senior advocate of Nigeria who will go and say the courts have no jurisdiction. And the matter will go to the Supreme Court, and the poor man down there in the village, the issue of jurisdiction will take the matter to the Supreme Court, and it will take 17 years to determine. Meanwhile, dollar, he's comfortable. Let the matter be going on to dollars. By the time compensation is ordered, the poor man have died, or his family are in no position to claim compensation in terms of dollars. So we will be interested in knowing the feelings of other countries, because so long as the fatwa is based on the views of Middle East, with all due respect, they are Muslims, they are fellow Muslims, but that their economies are not like our economies. There is no extensive pauperization of the populace. Their exchange rates, though they are import dependent also, but they export a lot also. Well, our export capacities are dwindling and keep on dwindling. So earning capacities of the average citizen average Muslim on the streets of Nigerian cities does not amount to anything. Every effort he's been putting to live above board, to make a decent living, is not reckoned with. He's being pauperized because everything is denominated against the dollar. So my view is that scholars must study our situation, must factor in these special circumstances. A country of so many Muslims, 80 million, 90 million, we are forced to reckon with globally. We have the highest concentration of Muslims who are of our skills all over the world. God meant us to be Muslims and practice Islam in its full essence. But that we are special Muslims in a special environment, an environment that continuously pauperizes its population. And we are branded. When they hide it, they try to be very nice. They use very nice words. We are the poverty capital of the world. When they say, Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world, and when they come to Nigeria, they will say, the north is where poverty is. And that's where majority of the Muslims are. So it's easy for anybody to say, Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world. He means me and you. We are the ones who are exceedingly and continuously being pauperized because we live amongst our rural folks. We see how somebody who could afford this now cannot afford that. They still rely on donkeys and camels or horses in certain situations. And now if you begin to say, they must pay sadaq in terms of dollar, that rubu dinar is now 50,000, 100,000, 1 million, 2 million. Maybe we'll have to go back to what they do in Borno, parts of Borno state, that pay silver gold. Go and buy this. And they are constant about that. So it's up to you if you want to marry. That is why there are so many eligible young girls who cannot get married because the young men cannot simply afford even the sadaq, which is the minimum requirement of a valid Muslim marriage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I feel compelled to add to what my learned senior just said. Now, I am highly concerned, particularly flowing from what he has said, because in truth, taking the example that he has given, somebody who has 500,000 naira 10 years ago and will be able perhaps to purchase a certain particular level of property with that 500,000 naira. And comes a brother and says, please, instead of you using that 500,000 naira to purchase that level of property, loan it to me. Let me do business with it. And then I'll pay you back. 10 years down the line, perhaps that 500,000 naira, which they would have used that